Today we have Tron here, and he made a kick pack in Serum 2, and he will walk you through everything today. So welcome, Tron.
Yo, what's up? So yeah, really nice to be here. Let's get into it right away. Thank you for having me and let's blast. So, well, it's nice to be here and yeah, let's start with basically I'll show you some of the kicks on their own. The kicks are oh shit. Gonna leave Serum there. I'm gonna start with some kicks on their own. These are very, very easy to use. It's just you see like the first oscillator is the kick drum, and the other two plus the noise oscillator are some layers, which are all in the macros. I'll explain later. You can see the kicks. Some of them are, well, I mean, a kick is just a kick, right? So let's start by the beginning, like how would I select a kick? It's very straightforward, like you have, it depends always, well, not always, but on the style and on what bass line you're using, etc. So here basically I have I think it's an F bass line. And if you see the bass line here on the analyzer, oh, that's not the bass. You have a fundamental frequency, and you have the next frequency. You know when the fundamental is 40, then the next frequency is going to be 80, and then the next one is going to be 120. So what I usually do is I try to lay my kick in between the fundamental frequency and the first harmonic, and this way you have space for everything. You have space for your sub, you have space for your kick, and it kind of like dynamically it kind of works. So right now let's just try and do that. Let's try and get kick and bass here. There you go. So this kind of works, this kick is hitting around 50 to 60 hertz, like on the low frequency. Well, it works. Let's just browse a couple of kicks like this. As I said, the kick's just a kick, so a lot of the kicks are going to work. It really just basically depends on that and on phase, so one thing is frequency wise, you want the kick to be on a comfortable position between the two harmonics, or at least that it's not like muddying everything on the fundamental frequency, because that will essentially, well, make it more difficult for you to mix, no? But then another thing is obviously the phase, yeah? And that depends usually on your bass line. There you go. So just without the sound behind it, I've basically, maybe I missed a couple, but I tried that all the kick drums are basically starting on this first 16th of the bass line, which is where usually you have the phase issues and the phase correction situation. I've tried that all of them are starting on positive. So if you have a positive sine wave, or a positive sawtooth, or a positive, whatever, like if your bass line starts on positive, it should be more or less correct, and then there's like a few just a little bit tweaking that you might need to do. So for the tweaking of the phase, there is these two macros 4 and macros 3. And those, one is the phase distortion, which is like, if you want to get nerdy, it's on the effects, and it's basically an all pass filter. And then the oscillator phase, which is this little thing here. And what they do is basically they move the kick drum up and down. So you can see how the kick is moving like up and down. just to get like a comfortable place in your face, you know, like, and this is the oscillator phase, and this phase distortion is doing it the other way around. With those two, like the phase distortion will change a little bit the character of your kick drum, but it's essentially it does the same thing as the oscillator phase, but in a slightly different way. So you can mess around with both of them and see what is best for you. That's basically how I would select a kick drum and see if it works with my bass line, essentially. On the other hand, we have the layering that I did, yeah, and we have like 3 high frequency layers, which is like 1 and 2 hi-hats, and then I have a noise click that you can use, and I have a low frequency layer that is the low saturation. This is the one that I wanted to get into. Basically, the low saturation is basically a saturator here on the effects, and yeah, if you want to get tweaky about it. So you see this bit. You see when I boost the low saturation, the LFO2 or sometimes LFO1, because I don't have a system, so everything's a little bit messy. But it's LFO1 and LFO2, and I'm gonna get into that. That's the kick architecture. LFO2 is the amp envelope, yeah. And the amp envelope, when I push the saturation up, it moves there is like these 2 points on the amp envelope that go down, so it doesn't jump in volume when you push the saturation up, yeah. So when the saturation is down, you see there's no movement here, and then when the saturation is up, it's kind of balancing the low end, you know, and it's balancing, so it's on more or less the same volume as you had before. But if you want more low end with the saturation, you can use like these 2 macro 2 are very, very easy to just find. It's macro 2 to LFO buzz 1 and 2, and those 2 are just, you know, very, very easy to tweak, and just so you can add a little bit of more warmth or less warmth or whatever you want, or, you know, if you feel that you need it, it's all there, you know.
Is it basically controlling kind of like the amplitude of the body of the kick? So if we imagine the kick in 3 parts, like the click, then the knock, and the body, like this, the sub, is it basically pushing the sub amplitude higher or lower, or?
Exactly. So basically this first one is going to be the knock, and this second one is going to be the real low end, you know, like that's like the release of the kick, and that's going to be pushing or pulling a little bit each one of those parts, and that's what I wanted to get into actually right now. So we have the kick drum architecture. I actually, this envelope 2 and this LFO, the one that goes like from up to low, these are the pitch envelopes, yeah. And the pitch envelope, I kind of envisioned it like this is your click, so you have like a very, very fine click here, you know, like, and you can tune the click up and down with this decay, and that is going to basically give you either a very, very fine control of your click, you know. And then you have the body of the kick, which is the tap, you know, like this is your mid-range from this point to this point. So if you want more tap, basically you can just, you know, just tune in this one, and that's going to give you a much more tappy without like changing too much the character of the low end. And we go to the low end here. This is the higher part of the low end, which is usually around 150, 130, you know, like hertz, you know. What I usually say is like the longer that the pitch envelope is staying in one frequency is going to be the louder that frequency is going to be. So if you curve this to the higher part of the, you see how now it's like, and this is just like the release of the kick, you know. So basically I've kind of done that in order to have more control over each part of the kick, without really having to mess around with the points, mess about with anything in particular. Also here with the macro, that's why I did that, because then you have much more control over that, in this way, just like moving the macro without moving these points, etc. So you have, yeah, that's basically it. Like that's how I see my kick drums here, And yeah, obviously, if you want to add some hi-hat or whatever, we have this 2 hi-hat, which you can just, if you want another hi-hat, you can just basically change this into whatever sample you want, and then you have like a noise click. That is just adding that little bit of like noise on top of the bit of the kick that you want to be a bit like more, maybe you want a little bit of top without, and this one is on envelope 3, so if you want basically a longer little noise click, you can do that. That's basically it, like, what you have any questions, or what do you think of this?
So you said you put the kick between the first, the fundamental and the second harmonic, basically. So, of the bass. Is that kind of like true for like all keys? Because let's say you have a bass in A sharp, then it's a very high key, for example. That would mean that your kick would then also go very high. And I had the experience that like the kicks, which I always like the most, always are more or less around like G, like 50 hertz ish, like plus minus, let's say, a semitone. So how you deal with that?
That's a great question. That's a really good question, actually, because yeah, it's very key dependent. Yeah, with the lower frequency keys like D, or like low C, up to say F or F sharp, I would definitely try to focus the low energy of the kick in between those 2 harmonics, because basically with the lower kicks, with the lower keys, you don't really want such a big sub. Yeah, you don't want such a big fundamental frequency basically on your bass line, and the kick is going to be actually taking that. Well, in all cases, you want the kick to be like actually giving that real low frequency, without like the bass messing too much, no. But that's more into the mixing kind of the mixing kind of thing. But with the higher keys, like let's say A sharp or an A, or something that is going like over 50 hertz, yeah, like the kick usually is going, in my case, usually is going to be lower than the fundamental, So what I try to do is like that the kick and the fundamental are not exactly in the same frequency. So then the dynamic, it's much more natural kind of thing, like the speakers are not doing the same doo, 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 doo. Then it becomes like a little bit muddy, and so I try to like, these kick drums, like they're basically tuned from like the lowest ones are around 40 hertz, like, which is like the lowest that I would do a kick drum. Like lower than that, it just dissolves all the low frequency, and the higher ones are around 60 hertz. So there is a range of that's why I say like just maybe browse around and see which one is almost like kind of fitting, and then just start tweaking if you actually need to. But yeah, that's a really good question. Definitely not always. Like if you have like a B, and something on B that it's like 60 hertz, like you don't want the kick drum to be hitting on 70. Obviously that's that's a good question. Thanks for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I have actually one more. I found it interesting that you mentioned that you put the point where the kick and the bass hits together, like on the positive side, so that where the speaker basically moves out. I have actually heard Dash Glitch from another YouTube channel like talking about this a while ago, that he found also like that basses sound better if they start moving out first in the speaker and not like sucking the speaker in. What's your opinion on that? Do you think it really matters the polarity of the bass, like how the first one goes, or not?
Well, it to me, that's why I did it this way, because I usually my baseline is usually pushing, and the first, the first cycle is pushing, like um or the first cosine, right? Like, so it's basically, I'm I feel that it's a little bit, well, I used to have bass lines that is are pulling, and sometimes that's what you want, but the only thing is, like, when you have one key, like one kick and bass that is pushing, and then the other one that is pulling, and you try to mix them together, they're going to cancel, and something is going to get canceled there. And for just for cohesiveness and in overall um ease to mix, like, so you don't want to say like, oh, this track is like a 145 negative. It's like, well, why? That's gonna be an extra layer of head fuck when you're playing, so it's basically, for me, it's just for ease of having, like, a standard kind of thing, but to be honest, like, he might be right. Like, I've also found out that, like, the a positive baseline, well, a positive starting point on the bass, it's usually a little bit more, like, because it's pushing the air, right? Like, rather than sucking it out. So to me, it's a little bit more a stronger kind of, yeah, a stronger bass, I think.
I have actually two follow questions. First, we need to kind of like be, or let's say, like, talk about a thing which is very like controversial discussed, I think, and it's like tuning kicks, because I personally don't do it, because for me, like, a kick is a sine sweep basically, and I would kind of like agree that it has like a certain frequency which is the strongest. But I've seen like videos where people like put like the last point of the kick like more stable, and then I have seen other people. I think there was like a kick pack on Futurephonic as well, where they were talking in the video that you shouldn't do that, and that's kind of like the worst thing you can do, like making the kick too stable in the end. Well, what's your opinion on that? Should a kick kind of like completely like sweep down, or should there be like a little stable part or something in the end?
I mean, that's a very contentious subject, but to be honest, like, I find it a little bit more natural that it, like, to some degree, it doesn't stay in the same place. Like, some of my kick drums do stay, like, in the end, because, like, they kind of feel more natural that way. Like, and sometimes you have that, it's two questions in one, that one. So basically, about tuning the kicks, I also don't do tuning for the low frequency. Like, I find it counterproductive, because what I said earlier, like, it's kind of like messing with the fundamental of the bass line, and it's going to make a little bit of a muddy kind of situation there on the low end. Secondly, the second question is like, well, it really depends sometimes on the style. Like, some styles will really like that low frequency that stays like, like, I don't know, like techno, or something like drum and bass, maybe, you know because sometimes, you want that low end to actually gel with the end of the kick, and it's really stylistic, I would say. But in trance, and specifically in psytrance, I would think, like, as you can see here, and I'm going to show you the pitch envelope here. So here, it's like, it's kind of not fully a logarithmic way to go down here. Like, it's some more log than others, but basically, you see, like, that one is kind of fully exponential, and it's only almost, it's just going down here. Maybe it's not even going down here at all. So this one is kind of flat in the end, but it's just the real end, like. But most of them, as I said, like, I don't really have a system, some of them. So you see, this one is gonna have like a much more like a, a bumpy kind of thing here on the low frequency, but then it just goes down here to oblivion, to, like, I don't know, like, this is probably lower than 40 hertz, but it's getting cut, it's getting cut here. So I would say, like, just mess around and see what works with your bass line, and what works with what you want on that kick drum, because it's always track dependent, like, it's always like, some tracks will really want that how would you say, like, that tonality on the low end on the kick, that it just goes it depends also on the bass line, you know. If the bass line is just structural and not really like the big, you know, like if it's just there, you know, like just doing the dig 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 dig, like for example in high tech, maybe you don't want that at all, you know. Like I think it just depends on the track, you know. I can't really generalize, but that's why I did both of them in my pack, you know. Some of them are pretty flat and some of them are just going down, because there's no right or wrong answers. I think there is just, yeah, some tracks will really benefit from a stable low frequency on the kick that just gives you that like and some of them is just, you just want the you know, like the boom, you know, like the higher of the kick and then just go down, you know. So yeah, it's pretty much, I can't really solve that one this time, sorry.
No, it's actually a really good answer because I feel a lot of decisions are really kind of like tied to the subgenre. So people can have like two opinions and both can actually be right. So I find it's actually a really interesting angle you had because I never thought about this, but it's kind of like logical that whatever, like, as you mentioned, the techno one, which if you look into that like classic like 808 kick thing where it goes into the sub, then yeah, definitely you want that kind of like droney thing. And maybe if you want to have more of a separation, then maybe you don't want to have that. That's actually a really good answer, I think you had.
Thank you.
I have one more question if we can dive a little bit deeper into the phase thing, because I mean, obviously, the most obvious thing on phase kick and bass is that you don't want to have it like canceling out. But I have read like so many like different opinions on where that, if you have like this little things, like little, how you say, like edges in there, where they should be, if they should be before or after, you know. So what are kind of like all the things you're looking for if you want to match the phase of the kick and bass? Besides, obviously, the ears are always like the last thing. I mean, I guess we all agree that analyzers are just to help, and in the end, it needs to sound good. But let's say if we would have to look at something, or we would have to measure something, what would you be looking for? What would be kind of like a sweet spot look like in the phase there?
Always, it's like it's the phase of the kick and bass is just the relationship on the low end, right? But it's a good question. Like basically, if I'm going to go back to my DAW here, and let's just go just the bass here. You can see here on the bass line, right? Like the bass line kind of, you have this the ripple of the what would be like the group delay, right? So this ripple from the group delay, it's on the positive side, even though you have this negative thing here. Like it's kind of on the positive side, right? Like you have positive and then negative, and then it goes back to positive and negative. No, what I would suggest is, obviously, if your ripple is on the positive, then you want to more or less understand where your bass is coming from, right? Like, so this is the start of the positive, and then the negative is coming here, positive and negative coming here. So basically you want the ripple to be on that part of your kick drum, yeah? So you want that this is going to be the kick drum. So basically your phase should like start going positive from here, and this is going to be your crossover point, and then the negative is going to be here, no? Yeah, obviously the ear is going to be the final answer, right? Like it's, if it sounds good, it's gonna be good. But usually that's for the beginning of the kick, you know, like for the beginning of the phase correction. You want that ripple to be on the right part of the kick drum as it is on the bass line, so it's not canceling out. And then in the end, like a good kick is going to look like it's turning into the bass, right? Like it's not, like it's following, like the decay of the kick is following more or less the phase of the bass. So you can see here that it's kind of doing that, like right here. It's So this to me, it's more or less okay. This is going maybe too low, like I said, like that was probably better, you know. So in the end, this points here are just, you know, you can move them around a little bit and see a big change sometimes. And so that's why I explained the architecture of the kick drum. And but that's basically what I look for. What I want is to hear that the you know, the tonality is right, you know, that that the dynamics are right, you know, that the dynamics of the kick and the bass are actually pushing, you know, like doing like what it's meant to be doing, that it's not like, you know, it's not sucking the air out, you know, it doesn't feel like it's too heavy, you know, or too mid-rangey, that it's like actually that they're working together. So as I said, you know, the first thing that you should definitely do is just to, before tweaking anything, is just to browse around and just go like, okay, this one doesn't work, this one yes. And that is not just like everything is on 50 hertz because it's like my favorite ones, which they are, you know, like I usually try to keep the low end on 50 hertz as you do. But it's just because, you know, sometimes you have, like you said, like an A sharp or an A bass, and then your kick drum, instead of being on 50, like it's maybe too tight and you want it on 45 or on 42 or something like that. That's why I did like those different low frequencies on everything, you know. And yeah, that's basically what I look for.
Yeah, so the question was basically, are the people supposed to play the kicks in like a certain key? Like if you would have like a simpler, for example, you would play a sample in C3 to have it like original, or you know, like what MIDI should they use if they want to play the kick, like how it sounds?
I used to have it on that everything used to be on, should be on F3, but now there is this thing on the oscillator here that is just enable pitch tracking, so I just disable that. And that's for people that want to get nerdy. There is this fixed main tuning that I just, you know, I just selected how, you know, like as this is exactly the semitones for that key. So basically you can just play on any key and they're going to sound the same. And also they're all on, this is like 4.9 hertz is like an eighth on 148. Yeah, because I made them on 148. So basically you can just if you want to stretch it a little bit, just type on both of them, LFO1 and LFO2. You can type 4.8 hertz, 4.7 hertz, and it's going to make them a little bit like longer. That's going to elongate the envelopes. But yeah, you want to keep them sync in case you know, if you like the kick, but you might want a little bit longer, but then your envelope is not really getting there, then yeah, you can elongate this like by just like, you know, double click and then typing whatever you want. Well, 4.8 should be, you know, like maybe 147, 146, you know. That's basically the tuning in terms of MIDI. It's everything in the same place, you know, like you can play it from C-2 to C8 and they're gonna sound all the same. Also these, you know, the hi-hats and everything, it's all exactly like that, you know. There's no pitch tracking, so everything should sound the same on any. The only thing is like the envelope one is obviously it's the amp envelope for the whole synth, and that's really tight. So the kick drums are 1/8, you know, like usually I make my kick drums 1/8 of a bar. So the MIDI part, I do 1/8 notes, you know, like that's the only thing that you should be doing. If you make a 1/16 note, it's going to cut it short. And you can see here on the analyzer. That gives you the option of just making shorter notes. and make kick rolls, etc. You know, but just be aware that the kick drums were designed with 1/8 notes in mind. Yeah. So, but yeah, you can definitely do kick rolls like this, and you can see in the oscilloscope, it's like very, very cool oscilloscope from Boomshanka Music. Shout out. And it's free. Yeah. So basically, if you guys you just want to use this kick as it is, like on the synth, you can do it. Like, it is very, very stable. Serum 2 and also 1, but especially Serum 2 is very, very stable. You can see there is no movement on the kick drum at all. But now you can see that's an 8th note. And that's 16th note, and yeah, so that's, but yeah, you can make rolls, you can make anything you want already from the synth. Nothing is moving, everything is actually, there might be a little bit movement up here, but you see the phase is completely stable.
One question about the phase distortion versus the oscillator phase. When to use what? And so what is kind of like the difference in it? Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, for sure. And this is for the nerds out there. So basically, the phase distortion, I'm using this this splitter that is just an all-pass filter. It's basically the phase distortion is going to be doing. So you can see the phase distortion is just moving this all-pass filter from up here to down here. And it is going to change a little bit more the character of the kick drum, and that's, if you like the kick drum, but, you could have a little bit more character, then you have obviously this low saturation thing and this phase distortion that will give you the phase distortion. You could see exactly what it's doing here on the oscilloscope, that it's moving the phase to the right. And then the oscillator phase is a non-destructive way of phasing the kick drum, which is just basically where is the starting point of your phase going to be, So, and that one is phasing it, it's moving the phase right to left, So it's just two ways to change the phase. Particularly, one of them is a little bit more colored and a little bit more destructive, which is the phase distortion. But sometimes you want that, you want that phase distortion to be moving the phase a little bit, and it actually sounds like fits better with the bass line. So it's a matter of what you want to achieve, same as with the low saturation. Obviously, sometimes you want this low saturation, sometimes it's going to be changing the character too much, and what you want is just to maybe go on with this one doesn't have an EQ, this is just like plain, but you can just go into an equalizer and just push the low frequency like that, like just tiny bit, and that's going to give you more or less the same feeling, but without the saturation on the low end, so it's just options to do the same thing, like you can you can do the same thing in various different ways, and I'm just giving you a couple of ways to mess with your kick drum.
But does the phase distortion also change like how the amplitudes are formed in the kick? I'm asking that because I actually use all pass filter like that on my bass, and I notice, the bass is obviously a more complex waveform, but what it does is that it kind of like dictates a little bit how this saw wave gets bent. So does it do the same on the sine wave, like that it maybe becomes from a more rounder curve to a more whatever, like steeper or something? Just asking. I know it's a weird nerdy question, and maybe you don't have an answer for that, but that's why I'm asking, because I'm using it for the bass for that reason, to shape it.
Yeah, no, for the bass line it makes more sense, and also like what it does, an all pass filter with the bass, it kind of changes also the group delay, right? So it's because it's making like a lower frequency group delay or high frequency group delay, and which is doing it is doing it on the kick drum also, but it is just a sine wave, right? And
Yeah.
it is like a sweeping sine wave. So it is just basically it is like you said, it is kind of bending the waveform, but it is as you can see here, like you can notice here, it is very, very you can't really see it changing the waveform, you know what I mean? Look. But here, for example, you see how it's kind of messing with this little bit, Here you can see this dip here that is basically being done by this. So it is a different way to change the oscillator phase, like it's to be perfectly honest, I don't really have a technical answer to that. But it is changing it in a little different way. That's why I say it's a little bit more colored. It's a little bit more like it's gonna change a little bit the character of your kick, but just a little bit. It's not really something very noticeable. Like it's quite subtle.
Yeah, actually, that's all my questions. I don't know. Did I forget to ask something? Do you have something which you think would be still interesting to show, or
Well, I can share a little bit of history for this kick drum, like I started doing this kicks with Serum because at some point basically someone was asking like, oh, how to make a kick drum, and like, can you make a kick drum with other synths, etc. Like, do I need kick two or kick one or whatever, the Nicky Romero thing? And I was like, no, you don't need anything. You can do a kick with Serum and you do a proper nice kick, and they were like, oh, can you show me? And I was like, okay, in theory you can do it, but like, how do you do it in practice? And then I was living in Barcelona at that point, so I didn't have my nice studio, nice speakers and everything. I had like a pair of I had no acoustics, and I had a pair of what's the name is Adam A7V or whatever, like the not A, the T7V or something, like the really low end Adam stuff, but they sounded good enough, and I was like confident enough. So that's the part where my ego comes in. I was like, okay, I'm gonna show you, and it took me a while, like first of all, I was getting some weird stuff on the high frequencies because I was going way too high on with the pitch envelope, or I was having the note too low, and there was like a limit on how high you could pitch the waveform, So I figured out like a place where you start, and then I figured out that in order to have a much smoother top frequency, I would have to use the envelope 2. But I'm using the envelope 2 in a way that, well, obviously it's if you see the modulation matrix, the envelope 2 is just unipolar, so it's going from 0 to the top and then back to 0, and the LFO1 or LFO2, whichever is doing the pitch envelope, it's bipolar. So the bipolar envelope is putting it up to a point from the start, and then the envelope 2, which is the tick, the tick of the kick, like the real high end, is pushing it higher, but like very, very finely. So it's just doing that little, and then after that, the envelope is sweeping all the way down. So it's and well, it took me a few, like within a few minutes, like I sent this guy a kick preset. Obviously, it was all shoddy and horrible kick, but it's like, okay, this is kind of a kick drum, like, and it was a better kick drum than some of the kick machines out there, so it's like, okay, that's good enough. I'm just going to send him that. And then it took me a while to actually perfect that kick, and also actually shout out to Mirok, because he gave me he's like, no, just do this on the amp envelope. He gave me a little tip that because I was having some issues, well, not issues, but like there was some, it wasn't so good before, and then he just went, no, just cut it here and put it like that, and he just basically, because I had the amp envelope starting on the top, so then the end would do like a little whoop whoop if you didn't cut it correctly in the end, you know. And so he just showed me, it's like, no, 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 I just did this with your kick drum and then it works better. And I was like, okay, yeah, nice, good on you. And that was yeah, that's basically the story on this kick drum.
Nice. Yeah, actually, I remember I did it also try it in Serum, and I think I had also this issue that it kind of like needs to sweep through a whole range, which you need to stack like a lot of like stuff on top to reach that, and
Mm.
yeah. But yeah, thank you very much. I mean, it sounds really nice. You managed to do it. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
cool.
actually like, and I was gonna put a kick drum pack out like a while ago actually, but I wasn't really so comfortable with it with Serum 1. And with Serum 2, it's just so much easier because you can stack the equalizers. So like some kick drums actually need a couple of equalizers. You'll see the presets. Some of the kick drums will actually need a couple of EQs, you know, this thing, that thing. And now with Serum 2, it's basically it's flawless. Like you can have as many as you want, and that's really, well, that's very empowering. So now I was really, man, I've been using this from bassism to kick to Odija kick drums, and I've the last one that I was using is the Odija, and it's pretty good kick machine. But now with this kick pack, like I've been in, and it's I've been basically changing my Odija kicks to like this kicks, and you can feel like you know, like it's much more snappy. It's much more like the high frequencies. I don't know, man. To me, it sounds better basically than any other kick machine with Serum. So yeah, just you have to try it out and see for yourself.
Nice. Actually, it kind of like falls into a thing I always tell my students. You know, like if people don't want to do something, they always buy some new plugin or some new stuff. But actually, what you need is like you need to master one VST really good, like one synthesizer. And Serum 2 is like is a beast. You can do anything with it. I mean, obviously, if you have more synthesizers, you have different colors and all that. But in the end, it's like always like skill over gear, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like what sometimes when you get too much gear, then you don't really, you know, how do they say, like jack of all trades, master of none, right? So it's that's when I went to Barcelona to live, like I was basically thinking about this, you know, and so I just bought a laptop there, got a nice portable sound card and a pair of speakers, and I was doing everything with Serum. That's where I really like my, well, not my production, but my synthesis understanding went up one or two levels, because you were trying to do everything with one synth, and suddenly you are like completely inside this machine, you know, like it's like your instrument. It's like when you're playing a guitar or playing a drum or something, you know, like you are part of that, you know, that instrument is part of you. It's like an extension of you, and that is, it's the same, you know, like it's not quite as the same as an instrument player, because you are, it's a little bit different, but it's in part is the same thing with that, and with the DAW, right? Like you don't want to be thinking what you're doing, you just want to be doing it. And that is a good point, you know. You should definitely start by mastering one synthesizer or one DAW before you start jumping around from one to the other, and like start you know, oh, because this has this features and this has that features. Well, yeah, but you can do most of things with a beast like Serum for sure. I don't know, thank you for having me, man. It's really nice to have a talk. Like actually, it's always like really like I always learn when I'm talking to other nerds, you know, like, and I always like rethink of what I'm doing, and like sometimes I think of different things that I wouldn't think of, no, and that's always like very enlightening. And I hope that everyone that is watching actually gets something from this, you know. if not, if they're not getting the kick drum pack, at least to understand more or less like how they are, like how we think in terms of kick and bass, you know, in terms of other stuff. So yeah, thank you for having me, and but do get that pack, eh?
Yeah, support the artist. No, really, I mean, it's a great pack, and Serum is a great synthesizer, which any of you, anyways, should have. So, and if you want to already have like a glimpse of the pack, we also prepared like a little download.
Well, yeah, basically, we got some of the kick drums out for you guys just for free on audio, so you can just start using them with your tracks, and just to check, you know, the quality of the kick drums and everything. So we have a little pack of kicks, audio kicks for you guys, so you guys can really, yeah, just get your hands dirty from the start.
Nice. I will put a link down in the description. So yeah, thanks for having you. Bye bye.
Oh, thank you, man. See you guys later. Wow.